Linear inequalities. If you can graph a line, you can graph linear inequalities. All right, so what I was saying is if you can graph an equation of a line, you can graph inequalities because it's basically a line and then we're going to shade one or the other. And I'm going to show you how you determine which side you shade on. So we're looking at something like, we haven't graphed lines, have we? We didn't actually graph lines. Do we know how? Do I need to do a recap real quick? If it's in, can you do it in any form that it's in?
Yeah.
Like if I had 2x plus 3y equals 6.
Yeah.
You could, but how else? Y'all never learned another way to graph in standard form?
We learned how to solve it.
You didn't graph by intercepts there?
No. What?
So,
Okay, do you plug in 0?
yes. Oh, I always, whenever I teach it in Algebra 1, I teach it by cover-up. Because if you plug in 0 for x, what happens to the x term? So then you have 3y equals 6. So y equals 2. So that's the y-intercept. Why is it lagging today? Same. Me too. And then if I plug in 0 for y, that goes away. And this is only when it's in standard form like this, ax plus by. So you have 2x equals 6. So x equals 3, which means my y-intercept is 3. My y-intercept is 2, my x-intercept is 3. And then all you have to do, you don't have to worry about applying any slope. You just go 1, 2, 3 on x, 1, 2 on y. Isn't that easier than putting it in slope-intercept form? That's standard form of a line. It's always easy. Okay, but it's only when it's ax plus by equals c. If it's in slope-intercept form, that's what you guys are wanting to keep putting it in. But if it's in slope-intercept form, let's say it was 1/2, let's do negative. Negative 1/2 x minus 1. I don't want to go too far down since I got a negative slope. What do? Where do you start? Negative 1. I don't know what's wrong with this thing today. It's just, it's not filling it. Negative 1, and then what do you do?
Go
Down 1 and over 2. And that will, this is ridiculous. There you go. Now, is it wrong if you take the other one and you put it in slope-intercept form? Not at all. You're just making more work on yourself. All right, so does that answer everybody's little recap question about, those are pretty much the two forms you're going to graph in. You can graph in point slope form. I need to order a new pen, I think. Let's say it was y plus 1 equals 2/3 x minus 4. Give me a point on that line.
0. I mean, 4.
4 what?
4 negative 1.
4 negative 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 1. And what's the slope? 2/3. So it's
like the little feet with the little
up to over 3. Okay, so those are the 3 forms of a line that you could be graphing in. Everybody okay with that? Okay. I'll give you just a second. So let's extend this to inequality. So now instead of it being an equal sign, there's going to be an inequality sign. Oh my goodness. See if that helps it a little bit. No. So now instead of equals, maybe it's something like this. What form is that? Standard form, right? ax plus by equals c. So I'm going to go through the steps of graphing exactly like I do when it's an equation, but here's the difference. There's 2 differences. Whenever I graph inequalities, the first difference is if it's greater than or less than, exclusive, then my line is going to be dashed. But if it's greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, then my line is going to be solid. Okay, that's the first difference. And then the second difference is my shading. The difference is you have to shade on these, whereas in a line you don't shade anything. So I'll show you how to decide where you shade. So let's graph it. Tell me, since it's in standard form, how should I probably graph it? Yep. Cover up, so x equals 2. 1, 2. And if 4y is 2, then what is y? 2. 1/2. Divide by 4. Okay. Again, what I'm doing is I'm finding intercepts. I'm plugging in 0 for x and finding y, and I'm plugging 0 in for y and finding x. I'm just using a simple method to do it. I like you to understand what it is you're doing, though. All right, so y is 1/2, right? So now, dashed or solid? Dashed. Terrible line here. Why is it dashed? It's not or equal to. That's exactly right. Now the question is, where should I shade? Everybody's saying up. Why do you think up?
There's no negative. It's greater than.
It's greater than, so where's y getting greater than? Here's what I do. And you're not wrong, you're right. But here's what I do. I always pick a test point. Okay? So the easiest point here to pick for me, and what I always pick if I can, is 0, 0. Okay? 0, 0 is here. When would you not be able to pick 0, 0? If the line goes through it. Okay? So when I pick 0, 0, that means I plug in 0 for x and I plug in 0 for y, right? So I get 0 plus 4 times 0, right? So 0 plus 0, is 0 greater than 2? Is that true or false? That's false. So if it's false, you shade the other way. Every point in the shaded area should make the inequality true. So since that is false, that means I do not shade there. Instead, I shade above, which is what y'all said initially. So you were right.
So if 0 is not greater than 2.
0 is not bigger than 2. If it made a true statement, then I would shade there.
Oh, you would shade that.
Because do this. Use 3, 3, because that's definitely in the shaded region, right? Do 3, 3 and see if it makes it true or false. 3 plus 4 times 3. Is 3 plus 12 bigger than 2? Yes, it's definitely bigger than 2. So because this is true, that tells me whatever side that point is, I want to shade there. Does that make sense? Yes. Every point on the shaded side will make the inequality true. Every point on the non-shaded side will make it false. Correct. Uno mas. Let's do a word problem. Yay! I'm going to use the one from your book because it's easier for me to do that than come up with one off the top of my head. Okay. This is number 12 from your homework. Let's do 13 because I usually do odds. And this one's got a solution in the back anyway. The whole written out solution. Okay, Carlos estimates that he will need to earn at least $700. Wait, this is number 13. At least $700 to take his girlfriend to the prom. What?
What? Limo? You gotta get like food?
What?
We go to 7.
I was gonna say he needs to take me to the prom. Okay. Carlos works 2 jobs as shown in the table. And here's what he has to. He's $700 at the prom. Oh my goodness. Okay. $8 per hour. So we're in high school. We're spending $700 on the prom. We're working 2 jobs. I hope we are getting an education. Main Street Deli. Well, I mean, poor Carlos. It's not very bright apparently because he's spending $700 on the prom. Okay. And babysitting for $6. Oh, he's getting robbed. Or else I pay too much.
What? No.
Okay. He's getting robbed. Okay.
I paid like $20.
Sorry, I pay a little more than that for my dog sitter. Okay. Write an inequality to represent this situation. Okay, we need to know how much you need. There are a lot of things. Let's think about what it is. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so $700 has to be less than or equal to.
Well, think about 700. Okay, yes, you're right.
Doesn't matter if it's X or Y.
No, doesn't matter.
8X plus 6Y.
That's exactly right.
Yes, because is that X and Y represent how many hours you
It
work?
says at least though. Wouldn't
X, well, think about, this is how much he actually makes.
Okay.
So he wants that to be more than 700. You see what I'm saying? The alligator mouth eats the
Oh.
bigger. So he wants this to
Okay.
add up to more than 700.
Got it.
Okay.
So you don't have complications with that money that is.
Right. So, X is the number of hours at Main Street Deli, and Y is the number of hours babysitting, and so if you multiply, find your rate there. Does that make sense to you? Okay, so of course this whole thing has been about graphing. So let's graph it. This is where you don't understand. Okay, so what form are we in?
We're in
Standard. We're in standard, right? AX plus BY equals C. So I'm going to cover up. If 8X is 700, tell me what X is. This is Main Street. This is babysitting. What is it? 700 divided by 8? 87.5. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Why am I just doing that first quadrant?
Because we don't need negative.
You don't need that, exactly. You're not going to work negative 4 hours, right? And you're definitely not going to make negative $2 whenever you go. So we only need that first quadrant. Okay, so there we go for the X. That's our Main Street. How about the babysitting? 6Y. What is it? That? Well, when we graph it, we're not going to be quite as specific. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, how terrible. Okay, pretend like that's 116. And so now is it solid or dashed?
solid.
It's solid. Why is it solid? It's inclusive. It's less than or equal to. That's right. Okay. It curved a little bit because I couldn't make it to the line because I don't have straight edge right here. It's all good. So now the question is, which way do I shade? And you can figure this out without really doing too much math. But if not, which way do I shade? Up. More, right. You want to make as much money as possible, right? Up. Up. I went by tens on my scale, by the way. And so part C says, will he make enough money if he works 50 hours at each job? 50 at each.
So
Where is the point 50-50? Is it in the shaded region or out of the shaded region? Is it? Are y'all sure? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes.
wow.
Slightly out.
It is slightly off.
How much?
Sometimes when you curve your line, it makes for an inaccurate graph. When actually, and look how much more my spaces are. What I should have done, I should have put it on it. If you do it correctly,
Yeah, it's exactly.
it's exactly 700, and we know that because we're plugging in. If you're on graph paper and whatnot, really this line's probably more like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's on the line. Okay, but of course I would plug in, especially if I'm talking about something so close there, I would plug in 50-50 and see, and that's what y'all did. And you said 8 times 50 plus 6 times 50 actually gives you 700. And because it's inclusive, then yes, he would barely have enough money. That poor prom date, only $700. Bless her.
I think that's pretty decent.
You think that's reasonable for
If you
prom?
go to, like Sam Kendall's with your date, you're gonna be spending a lot of money. Like,
That's not $700.
Everybody's making a mental note not to ask you to prom because you're an expensive date.
Last year,